There was once a merchant whose name was known in every kingdom. His ships crossed distant seas. His caravan stretched farther than the eye could see. He owned vineyards that disappeared beyond the horizon, and vaults so full of gold that no one alive could count it. If a king desired silk, he bought it from a merchant. If a queen sought jewels, she wore the merchant's finest. People spoke of his fortune as though it were a legend. Children dreamed of becoming him. Even rulers envied his life. Yet every morning, before the sun had fully risen, the merchant wandered alone through his magnificent gardens, not to admire them, but as though searching for something that wasn't there. His servants noticed. His family noticed. Even strangers could see it in his eyes. He possessed everything, except peace. And the strangest part was this. His worry grew heavier each day. He could not sleep. He could not rest. He could not sit through a meal without falling silent. His wife watched him with growing concern. At first, she thought it was only fatigue. Then she thought it was grief. But soon she understood it was something deeper, something she could not name. When people asked him what troubled him, he always gave the same answer. I don't know. I only know that whatever I'm looking for, I haven't found it yet. Some believed he had been cursed. Others whispered that no amount of wealth could satisfy a restless heart. His wife, frightened by how deeply his sorrow had taken hold of him, finally sent for a village elder. An old man came quietly to the merchant's estate. He was not rich. He was not famous, but he had listened to many troubled hearts in his lifetime. The merchant's wife led him to the garden and said softly, "Please listen to him. He has everything, yet he is not at peace. I do not know how to help him anymore." The old man nodded and sat beside the merchant beneath the trees. He did not interrupt. He did not judge. He only listened. The merchant spoke at last, his voice low and weary. "I have wealth beyond measure. I have land, ships, servants, and honor. Yet each morning I wake with the same emptiness. It is as if something is calling me, and I do not know what it is." The old man remained silent for a long moment. Then, as the sun slipped beneath the hills, he smiled. "You've been searching in the wrong marketplace." The merchant frowned. "There is another." The old man nodded. "There is a marketplace that appears only once each year. It cannot be found on any map. It cannot be bought. It cannot be conquered. It simply appears. To those who believe that one more thing will finally make them happy." The merchant laughed. "If such a place exists, I'll buy everything it has." The old man looked at him for a long moment. Then he quietly replied, "So does everyone else. That is the tale." The merchant could think of nothing else. For an entire year, he waited. When the first autumn leaves began to fall once more, he left before sunrise and followed the old man's instructions. Across quiet fields, through an ancient forest, over a narrow stone bridge hidden beneath the morning mist. At first, there was nothing, only silence. Then, as the sun climbed above the trees, bells echoed in the distance. Voices followed, music, laughter. The merchant rounded a bend and stopped. Before him stretched the most extraordinary marketplace he had ever seen. Its streets shimmered with golden lanterns. Its stalls were filled not with fruit or cloth, but with things no ordinary market could ever sell. One merchant offered fame, another sold beauty. Nearby stood a craftsman displaying strength. Further ahead, a woman welcomed those seeking wisdom. There were stalls for adventure, for power, for long life, for respect, and countless others the merchant had never imagined. Above every stall hung the same promise: your heart's greatest desire, fulfilled. The merchant smiled. At last, He had found what was missing. His first purchase was influence. Within days, kings sought his advice. Crowds gathered simply to hear him speak. For a while, his heart felt lighter, then the feeling quietly faded. People's admiration became ordinary. He returned to the marketplace the following year. This time he purchased beauty. Wherever he walked, heads turned. Strangers complimented him. Artists begged to paint his portrait. Again, the joy faded. The year after that, he bought knowledge, then adventure, then a longer life, then greater wealth than he already possessed. Every wish was granted exactly as promised. Every dream became reality. And every time, the same strange pattern returned. The excitement lasted days, sometimes weeks, rarely months, but eventually, every miracle became ordinary. The merchant grew older. His estate became larger. His name spread farther across the kingdoms. Yet each autumn, he found himself standing once again at the entrance to the mysterious marketplace, searching for the one thing he had somehow missed, believing that surely this year's purchase would be different. Years passed. The merchant's hair turned silver. His hands, once steady with youth, now trembled with age. Yet every autumn, he returned to the marketplace. The merchants greeted him with familiar smiles. They already knew why he had come, not for riches, not for power, but for the hope that this year, something would finally be enough. As always, he wandered from stall to stall, until, for the very first time, he noticed one he had never seen before. It stood at the very end of the marketplace. There were no glittering treasures, no jewel displays, no crowds, only an old shopkeeper seated beside an empty wooden table. The merchant frowned. "What do you sell?" The old shopkeeper smiled. "Nothing." The merchant laughed. "Nothing. I've crossed forests and mountains to reach this place. I've spent years searching every corner of this market. And you have nothing?" The old man nodded. "Because there is nothing left to sell you." The merchant's smile disappeared. "I don't understand." The old shopkeeper looked at him kindly. "No," he said, "you don't." He gestured toward the bustling marketplace. "You came here believing happiness was hidden inside the next purchase. You believed there was always one more thing waiting to complete your life." The merchant looked around, at the stalls, at the merchants, at the treasures he had spent a lifetime collecting, then back at the old man. But every one of them kept its promise. "They did," the old man replied. "You asked for wealth. You received it. You asked for beauty. You received it. You asked for respect. You received it. The market has never deceived anyone." The merchant's voice grew quiet. "Then why? Am I still searching?" For the first time, the old shopkeeper's smile faded. "Because I have never sold happiness. I have only ever sold the things people believe will bring it." Silence settled over the marketplace. The merchant lowered his eyes. For decades, he had blamed the market, but the market had never failed him. It had simply revealed a truth he was never willing to see. All those years, he hadn't been chasing happiness. He had been chasing the feeling of almost finding it, and no purchase, no matter how extraordinary, could make that feeling last. But beneath the tale was never a magical marketplace, and it was never about a merchant. It was about a journey every one of us has taken. We tell ourselves the same story over and over again. When I get the promotion, when I buy the house, when I earn a little more, when I find the right relationship, then I'll finally be happy. And for a while, we are. The promotion comes. The new phone arrives. The dream job becomes reality. The excitement is real. The joy is real, but something curious begins to happen. What once felt extraordinary slowly becomes ordinary. Yesterday's dream becomes today's routine. The life we once prayed for becomes the life we barely notice. Not because it has lost its value, but because our minds are remarkably good at adapting. The merchant wasn't greedy. He wasn't broken. He was simply caught in a cycle that almost every human being experiences. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. It's our tendency to return to a familiar level of happiness after positive changes, no matter how exciting they first seem. It's why the thrill of a new car eventually fades, why a larger home soon feels normal, why achievements that once seemed impossible become expectations. Our minds quickly adjust to what was once extraordinary and begin searching for the next thing. The merchant spent years believing happiness was waiting at the next stall. Perhaps we've spent years believing it's waiting after the next milestone. But maybe happiness was never something the marketplace could sell. Maybe it was something the merchant stopped noticing the moment he already had it. Perhaps the merchant's greatest mistake wasn't wanting more. It was believing that happiness always lived one step ahead of him. How many times have we said, "I'll be happy when I graduate, when I get the job, when I earn more money, when I move into a bigger house, when I finally achieve the life I've imagined"? There's nothing wrong with pursuing those dreams. Ambition gives us direction. Goals give us purpose. But if happiness is always waiting at the next destination, we may never notice it walking beside us. The merchant spent a lifetime chasing tomorrow, only to discover that tomorrow kept moving. Perhaps the greatest treasures in life aren't the ones we spend years searching for. They're the ones that quietly become invisible, because we've grown used to having them. So before you ask yourself what's missing, take a moment to ask a different question. What have I stopped appreciating simply because it has become ordinary? Because sometimes the most valuable things we have are the things we've forgotten to see.